Christian and Anderson, good to talk to you both. There's something interesting, a lot of things interesting about the late Hugo Chavez. First, when he came into the studio, it's been a long day for me. I had taped Ahmadinejad in the morning, then I taped Chavez, and then I did Gaddafi, all in the same day. They were here for the UN. Chavez came in, he spoke perfect, he spoke in English to me. We spoke about music, he spoke about his love of baseball, he knew everything about American baseball, he was jovial, hugging, and then we started the interview, he had an interpreter. I thought that was a little strange why he didn't just converse in English. He was very defensive. We went all over the lot on many things. He said that Bush tried to assassinate him, and he had proof because he had certain people confess that they were among the assassins. He said that Hillary Clinton would be a failure as a Secretary of State. This was in 2009, so Obama had been in office about 7 months at the time. I found him fascinating. It's an appropriate word, guys. He was, if he were an American politician, or Republican, Democrat, he'd been elected. He had a manner about him that was effusive. You couldn't help but like him while despairing of a lot of the things he did. So I found him terribly interesting.
Christian, how much did Chavez change not only Venezuela, but Venezuela's relationships with other nations?
Well, I think really a lot, and I think what Larry just said, I mean, all those people Larry interviewed in one day,
yeah.
I like to call it loosely, the axis of friendship that Chavez collected around himself, really sort of professionally kicking sand in the eyes of Uncle Sam, as one analyst put it to me. This was part of his international allure, the idea of standing up against the United States. And don't forget, while he had so many petrodollars, while the price of oil is so high, and he has the highest, the biggest oil reserves in the world, he was able to dispense a lot of largesse and therefore have a lot of friendships based on petrodiplomacy. Inside his country, he was the populist leader. He was the man who appealed to the poor, to the downtrodden, and you can see on the streets there is a lot of outpouring of grief for him. Obviously, in his later years, there were, the institutions, the Supreme Court, all sorts of institutions were compromised by him. But in the last election, he won 55%. His opponent won 44%. And it was the closest the opposition have come to him. And I think that's where people are going to be looking. Is his death a game changer for the future?
Larry, it's interesting him speaking in Spanish during the interview. I'm wondering how much of that was because he wanted the interview to be understood by people in Venezuela more than he was interested in it being understood by people in the United States. So that for him, the reason to do the interview, the target audience, was really the people back home.
I think that's a good point. Another thing unusual about him, Christian and Anderson, when you find this interesting, is that a lot of the leftist leaders are very anti-religious, but he professed to me to be a observant Catholic, totally believed in Jesus Christ, and was observant. You buy that?
Christian, it's interesting that because you don't hear that, as Larry said, from a lot of some of the other leaders, certainly Castro.
You don't. I mean, the pictures of him with Larry and him elsewhere, Hugo Chavez is always carrying a crucifix and sort of fingering it like worry beads. I'm not sure how much that played in terms of his cult appeal, but certainly the people of Venezuela are very religious, and perhaps there was a real sort of connection there. Look, no matter how much he was a pain in the neck to the United States and to other countries, he also, as I said, had this cult following, had this sort of populist leadership that played on a lot of the needs and desires of people in his own country. And even you're going to hear, and no doubt you're going to report on some of the praise that's come from the United States, some certain Congress people who have talked about how he put his oil at the disposal of the poor and dispossessed, not just at home, but in the U.S. and elsewhere as well. So he was somebody who knew how to play the crowd and who was 15 years president of Venezuela and was this cult. And now, can his chosen successor carry that on? Most people don't think that he will have that authority, that cult, that sort of charisma, if you like, to be able to maintain Chavismo at the level that Hugo Chavez did.
Yeah.